Education is under attack. What do we do? Education is under attack. What do we do? What do we do? What do we do? All right, make some noise.
Barbara Byrd Bennett has announced that CPS plans to close actually over 50 schools, and I think they're talking about 61 school actions. As far as I know, this would be the most school actions ever in any school district. And Chicago, after all, was the birthplace of this whole agenda to close neighborhood public schools, particularly in low-income communities of color, and to expand charter schools and privatization.
This action makes me think that CPS is slowly privatizing our schools.
We are very confused on why there could be this many underutilized schools and this many charter schools saying they are taking over for areas that need people, that we need these seats. Suburban districts would kill to have this much empty room, to be able to utilize the space. They would never think about closing a neighborhood public school. Why is Chicago trying to go opposite of what is working in these communities?
The spokesperson for Chicago Public Schools, Becky Carroll, about two weeks before the school closings were announced, in responding to the question that if children from a school that CPS calls underutilized were transferred to another school, then in fact wouldn't that school be overcrowded? Wouldn't in fact the receiving school now have far too many children in the classroom? And she said, well, really, 40 children in the classroom is not too many. And that she thought that a good teacher could handle that. We know that in CPS there aren't very many educators in there anymore, and certainly Becky Carroll is not one of them, and apparently not the people making this decision, because education research is very clear that small class sizes, when combined with effective qualified teachers and the full resources that children need to learn, are essential for children's learning. And we can be assured that in none of the affluent suburbs or even in the magnet schools in Chicago that there are 40 children in a classroom.
Say it with me. No matter what, you can't have these schools. So we don't care what the board vote is in May. I don't care what the appointed board of Chicago Board of Education does in May. What I know is they're going to have to drag us kicking and screaming out of the schools in our neighborhood.
CPS wants to pour all the money into the charter schools. How come they can't pour some of that money into the CPS neighborhood schools that already exist? They claim they're going to use police protection to make it safe for children to go to school. Where are they going to get the money to do that if they're closing schools, if they don't have any money?
How do we think about this now, a policy that's almost 10 years old that has not improved the education of the children who've been affected? Over 100 schools have already been closed. It has led to spikes in violence. It has destabilized the students, their families, and their communities, closing schools that were anchors in communities. It has created education deserts. So we have food deserts, and now we have education deserts in African American communities where there will be virtually no or very few neighborhood public schools left.
Hi everybody, my name is Joan Lowe. I don't have a student at Tilton, but my daughter did graduate, my son and my daughter. I think I was before you guys 3 years ago, and Tilton was up on the list also. I asked for safety patrol for our kids. We never got it. You was talking about closing McConey. Leave our schools alone. Leave them alone. We're fine. We don't need you. I have an after-school program where kids from high school come to Tilton to be in my after-school program. They feel safe with me. I call the police. They don't come. They're selling drugs right across the street from Tilton. And you guys talking about putting charter schools there, is it going to be safety for them? No. Leave our schools alone.
Chicago Public Schools has announced that they're doing this in order to save money. They claim that they have a $1 billion budget deficit. So what do we really know about this $1 billion budget deficit? We don't actually know if they have one. Over the past 6 years, they've every year claimed to have a deficit, and every year they've ended up having a surplus. The Chicago Teachers Union looked at the budget, and the audit report showed a $344 million surplus. So A, we don't even know if there is a budget deficit. B, we do know that when schools are closed, that school districts, in fact, don't save money. We have research on that. So that's the second thing. The third thing is that we know that school closings in Chicago have been devastating to the communities affected. And so, in fact, when we look at this policy, we see that it's a continuation of what has been happening in Chicago, in which we have essentially a business plan masquerading as an education plan. There's no education research to support this policy of closing schools and of turning them over to private operators. We have seen the relationship between school closings and gentrification, the destruction of public housing, and the pushing, particularly of African Americans and in some cases Latinos, out of their neighborhoods in order to rebrand those schools for a new middle-class clientele.
My name is Marissa Spinnick, a proud teacher and LSC member at Manier Elementary School. And I'm here to speak for our children. We talk a lot about the budget crisis, test scores, about underutilization, but we need to be talking about our students, who are so much more than statistics, test scores, or a collection of bodies to be counted as part of a formula. They are incredible individuals who need the constant stability and support that Manier provides them. We are a school that has served generations of families in the neighborhood. We are a school where students have come back after trying a year at the nearby charter school because they missed the sense of community they had at Manier. We are a school with numerous partnerships among the community. Where will our students go if Manier closes? Why should our students need to leave the neighborhood to go to school? How do we ensure they can get to school safely? How do we make sure they have class sizes where they get the individual attention they deserve? How do we make sure they don't slip through the cracks? These are the questions we need to ask. These are the questions that need to be answered before we talk about uprooting hundreds of students from the safety of the school that has always been there for them. We, the faculty of Manier, know our students. We understand their needs. We support them. We think about them before we get to work in the morning and long after we've left for the day. We plan, we collaborate, we stand together, and we never give up on our children because they are all our children. And we will continue to speak out to make sure their voices are heard and their needs are met. Thank you.
And this set of hearings before a group of paid staffers was actually funded by the Walton Foundation, which is a national foundation. It's a venture philanthropy started by the head of Walmart, and their agenda is really charter schools. So what we saw at these hearings, I attended a number of the hearings, and they were very similar to the hearings, the sort of sham hearings that CPS has had ever since 2004, in which the people who make the decisions are never there. There is some type of paid person who sort of listens to the testimony. And so schools come in their school colors, in their school t-shirts, with reams of evidence.
My name is Dana Katz, and I am the literacy coordinator at Brentano. I speak on behalf of the teachers and the instructional leadership team. As we embrace the heartfelt support from our parents, residents, and community partners, I would like to shift our focus for a moment to our children and their academics. Even as we face the disappointing news that we were a level 3 school this year, the staff at Brentano knew in our hearts that our teachers and students were better than what was shown on paper. In that spirit, I would like to share with you our latest MAP scores from January to prove my point.
They have flowcharts, and they have binders, and they have all sorts of evidence to show that, in fact, their school is not as underutilized as CPS has estimated, because, in fact, these estimates are, in many cases, dramatically off. And how the school has specific programs that are really important.
Education, power, tact, we are the best. Math, science, social studies put us to the test.
They have an orchestra, they have a band, they have a premier science program. They've been working to support the learning of the whole community, so they have all sorts of programs. The school is really an anchor in the community, and they end with, so please don't close our school, and please don't close any schools. And this is really heartbreaking.
I moved from Iowa just to put him in preschool. I moved from Iowa to give my daughter the best education. Iowa was not teaching my daughter what Graham is teaching her now. Now, I'm going to tell you this. I'm not going to stay long, but if you close Graham, you tell the Board of Education they are going to take my child and they are going to teach them in their office. Now, let them know that.
I've been here since kindergarten, and what bugs me the most is that we're on the list, especially Dewey. As I hear from all of these people coming up, taking their guts, standing here, saying they don't want CPS to close their schools, all their programs that they bring. Why should we? We're not just affecting anybody and everybody else. We're affecting the kids, their feelings, and everything. You're gonna hurt the little kids when they grow up. You're gonna make them start doing crazy things to themselves. And I don't want to see that happen. I want to see 7th grade graduate from 2014. I'm going to be graduating 2013, and I am proud. I don't want to sit here and see all these little kids sitting there being good kids, getting good grades, doing their best, but they sit there, going to go to schools. I don't know where, out of state maybe. You're going to sit there, hurt them. You're not going to let them be with their friends anymore. Okay, we're going to graduate, but still, we want to graduate to school. We've been here from preschool on up, no matter what.
A, the people taking this testimony do not make the decisions. B, it's extremely doubtful that anyone in CPS making these decisions ever looks at this testimony, because after all, the decisions are made behind closed doors, not for reasons that have much to do with the evidence that's actually presented. There is a very high level, a very sophisticated level of consciousness on the part of people. People are clear that this is about that the real estate developers want their neighborhoods, and they want them out of their neighborhoods.
The war should not be against our children. The war should be against City Hall. The war should be against all those stupid planters that they put on Irving Park and Ashland Avenue. Millions of dollars wasted for plumbing, electric, maintenance, upkeep. Why can't they take those millions of dollars and give it back to the teachers so that they can have the tools to teach our children?
People are clear that it's about charter school expansion and charter schools wanting the buildings that their school is in, or if not the buildings, wanting the students who are commodities for the charter schools. And people are crystal clear that this is about racism. If we look at the map for this year of where the schools are proposed to be closed, it looks very similar to the maps in other years, but it's really striking. It's a set of black dots that represent the proposed school actions that run straight down the south side of Chicago and straight across the west side of Chicago, that over 80% of the children who would be affected are African American. I think 92% are low income. They're disproportionately homeless children, disproportionately students with special needs who have individual education plans which cannot be easily transported.
My name is Angela Bowman. I'm a parent at Marconi School. Can you hear me? I'm a parent at Marconi School. And you cannot be surprised by the disrest and unrest in the room. You know, you're coming, since I've been there, we've been asking for transparency. We've been asking to really be able to see what is going on and what your plan is. And year after year after year, you give us the same thing. And then you look in this room and you want people to show respect and be happy and jovial about the fact that you want to close our schools. You're asking our children to walk through crime-infested, drug-infested, gang-infested neighborhoods and act like everything is going to be okay when you yourselves will not get your children or your grandchildren or your neighbor's children and get up at 8 or 7 o'clock in the morning and walk your children through these neighborhoods. We know what these neighborhoods are. We know what goes on in this neighborhood. You know what goes on in the neighborhood. Turning a blind eye doesn't make things change. It just means you turn your back. That's all it means. When they put you talking about safe passage. This ain't safe passage. You know what this is? This is a middle passage. Because when our ancestors got on the ship, they told them it was a safe passage. This ain't no clues you giving us. This is straight up genocide. Quit playing with people in your community. This is where the majority of you came from. We came from our ancestors were hard-working people. It don't matter what color you are up there. You know where you came from. You know the hard work it took your great-grandparents to get here, and now you want to hand us any old thing and say accept it and walk around and act like we ain't supposed to fight? Time out for playing. Be for real with us.
I am Karen Lewis. I am president of the Chicago Teachers Union. Let's not pretend that when you go to schools, primarily on the south and west sides, that the children who will be affected are black. Let's not pretend that that's not racist.
Many neighborhoods in Chicago have been destabilized. They've been destabilized by disinvestment, by the destruction of public housing, by home foreclosures, by housing instability in general, by the lack of jobs, by poverty. And those are the conditions that create stress on children and on communities. And that is the real violence that is being done to those neighborhoods. So there is a real concern in neighborhoods about the instability that has been created in neighborhoods by these decisions, which are policy decisions.
Hi, my name is Janice Northley. I'm the chairperson for Ryerson LSC. You have the data in front of you, and I will quickly go through this. Chicago has been under fire because of the crimes plague in our community. A parent's worst fear is sending your child to school and they do not return home. This is something as the parents we agonize every day as we open the door and send our kids off to them. Safety is a very important concern to us. I'm going to ask you to look over to your right. Student Red lives in the 3800 block of West Huron. That student will have to walk a total of 12 blocks, 1.2 miles, 24 minutes to get to and from School B, cross 5 main busy streets: Chicago Avenue, Augusta, Division, Hamlin, Central Park. Walk through 7 different branches of gang. Student Blue live in the 500 block of Monticello. That student would have to walk a total of 16 blocks, 1.4 miles, 28 minutes to get to and from School C. Cross 4 main busy streets: Hamlin, Chicago Avenue, all still in the Division, and walk through 11 different branches of gang. Student Purple live in the 900 block of North Harding. That student would have to walk a total of 15.5 blocks, 1.4 miles, 30 minutes to get to and from school F, plus 4 main busy streets, Hamlin, Central Park, Holman, Chicago Avenue, and walk through 8 different gates to get to school. Our children will have to go through crossroads and elements which they do not understand and should not understand, because as an adult, I do not understand. They would be sent out into a battlefield, a war zone. I am tired of hearing about kids dying. Every time you turn on the TV, we need to protect our children. Give them a safe and quality education that we was promised. As a parent, we should not be having funerals every week. We should not have to plan a funeral for our children. We should be picking out the high schools that they're going to, the college that they're going to, wedding details, and celebrating them moving into the world so they make a difference. You need to reconsider closing our schools.
When we talk about violence in neighborhoods, we need to talk about what the real roots of violence are. The violence of poverty, the violence of racism, the violence of disinvestment, the violence of displacement, the violence of disenfranchisement that is underlying and very deep. And people, I think, are very aware of this. And that turbulence has created a lot of chaos in some neighborhoods. In really throughout 2012, there was a campaign by a coalition of parents and community organizations from across the city, from the far north side to the far south side, the west side of Chicago, the northwest side of Chicago, for an elected representative school board.
You know, we live in Chicago, and sometimes you feel like Chicago is the whole world. But guess what? Over 90% of the school boards in the U.S. are elected. They're not appointed. So Chicago is the outlier rather than the common denominator. So the things that we experience in Chicago, all these undemocratic practices in Chicago, really dictatorial practices in Chicago, do not exist, for better or worse, where there are elected school boards.
And in the November election, people voted in those precincts. 87% of the people voted in favor of an elected representative school board. So this was a kind of public mandate, if you will. It was a pretty good representative sample, since it really covered a lot of different precincts in the city and a lot of different parts of the city. The policies to close schools, to privatize neighborhood schools, are actually part of a nexus of policies in the city that have to do with really remaking the city. And of course, the other side of a global city is of these high-paid workers and glittering glamour zones like Millennium Park and the Magnificent Mile, is the legions of low-paid service workers that both make these high-paid service industries run, that are people's nannies and dog walkers, and do the low-wage labor in the city. And then there are those folks for whom there is really no place in the economy anymore, as they've restructured the economy in Chicago. And so they are, from the standpoint of the corporate financial interests in the city, simply taking up space, in fact, valuable real estate. So that is really the underlying factor behind the plan for transformation, which is the destruction of public housing, and is part of the underlying factor behind the school closings. Working class people in this city are essentially pawns in this process from the mayor's point of view. They need to be pushed around, moved around to serve this larger agenda. And I think that people are aware of this. So that is why, you know, during the teachers' strike, one of the chants was that Rahm has to go. And what we're hearing a lot now is one-term Rahm. So this is really a fight over who gets to make decisions in the city and in whose interests. It's a political fight for the city itself, of which education is a piece.